Alright, so I jumped the gun a little bit early on this one, but as I was getting into this, I figured, you know what, this is turning out to be enough interesting content that it might make a good video. So I decided that I'm going to start filming this. What happened was I was starting into the coolant system because I was going to replace this. This is like an aluminum or steel, stainless steel tube, flexible tube, and it's just kind of crap. It just bounces around and clangs against stuff and makes a rattle. And also the ends of this is very cheaply made. I don't like this. So I'm going to be replacing this, and I have some nice new silicone hoses. So that's going to replace that. And as I was getting into this, I was removing the battery and getting more access to here, and I discovered this. So one of my wiring cables started to corrode from the inside. So it's completely corroded out and it needs to be replaced. That's going to probably entail replacing more than just that one. I've also considered relocating the battery just because it's in the way of a bunch of stuff, so I might do that, but at any rate I will definitely be replacing this. I guess we'll start getting into it. Okay, so now where we're at on the Jeep is I have this new line all routed, and it sits a lot lower than it was before. Before it was sitting almost level with the top of the engine, and that wasn't good because you could easily get air bubbles. And so if we take our 4-foot level, see that level is about there, and that means that there is about a 1/2 inch, a little bit less than a 1/2 inch gap between the top of the coolant cap and the top of that radiator hose. So that means that our radiator will have less of a chance of getting any bubbles in the system. So that's good. Okay, and then below, underneath the vehicle, there's this radiator hose that comes along here, has a little drain port so that I can flush the coolant system, and then it goes on up and into the engine. So the way that this coolant system works is that it has two low points that you have to drain. So this is the second low point, and I'm going to figure out some way of attaching it maybe to the frame somewhere, and I'm going to have a drain port on this hose as well, and this will just be to drain the second low area of the Jeep. Alright, so now that we got the coolant figured out on the Jeep, that's all pretty much done. So now it's time to move on to the battery cables. And as you saw before, the battery cables have completely come apart. They've just disintegrated. And that's because it was aluminum battery cables with copper lugs. And so you have this thing called dissimilar metal corrosion. And that basically means just that there's two different types of metals, and when electricity is flowing through them, it accelerates the corrosion between the two metals. So it completely corroded out the aluminum wires. So I have some new battery lugs or battery cables that are copper cables, and I have some copper fittings. So I'm going to use this to crimp those fittings onto the battery cables, and gonna get that all figured out. Okay, so now I need to go through and replace all of the battery cables. So the way that I want to set this up now is I want only two cables attached to the battery, and then all of the other cables are going to come off of these bus bars. So I'm going to need to go through and replace each of these cables and send them from their new mounting point to wherever they need to go, either on the engine or in the electrical system. So I think I'm going to start with all of the negatives, all of the grounds. So I'm going to replace all of those. And I think that I'm going to time lapse this because it's going to be kind of boring to film it in normal. So time lapse. put back together. Just need to connect up the battery, and I've got everything labeled so that I know where it goes. So everything is wrapping up quite nicely. Alright, so now that we got the battery cables all sorted out, it's time to move on to the hood. I want to completely strip down all of the paint on this, both on the top side and underneath, and fix a little bit of repairs that I had done previously because it's starting to rust through again. So I need to clean all of that down, and then I want to repaint the entire hood. So let's do it. Well, as is so often the case, when you think that a project's going to take a couple of days, it winds up taking a couple of weeks. So that's it that we're going to be able to do in this video. We just were able to weld up some of those places that I had to clearance the hood to fit the engine. So we welded those up, and then we also did the coolant and the battery terminals. In the next video, I'm going to do a little bit of Bondo right there to make sure that that area is nice and smooth. I'm gonna sand down the entire hood and make sure that it's going to accept paint, then primer it and paint it, and then put it back on the Jeep. Not sure what else will go into that video. There's probably going to be some other stuff other than just the hood, but we'll see. So I hope that you enjoyed the video, even though it is kind of I think it's more boring stuff, but it's all in trying to make this Jeep really nice, and currently it's just not. So I want to make it nice so that I really enjoy driving the Jeep someday. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next video. Well, as is so often the case, what you think is going to take only a couple of days winds up taking a couple of weeks. So in the next video, I'm going to do a little bit of bonding right there, bondo right there.